We are live today in Obsessed Hub. Thank you so much for anybody who is out there and joining us today. It is Wednesday. Do we have a thing for Wednesday, like Whiskey Wednesday or something? I don't know what it is. Whimsical Wednesday. And we have the amazing Gillian Maddigan joining us today. I'm actually so pumped. I'm super, super pumped to talk to you today, Gillian, because I know that you talk about human connection, how to kind of read stuff that without the words. So body language, energetic, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, don't let me freaking waffle. Let's just get stuck into it. It actually blows my mind. Like, how did you even get into this, Gillian? Welcome, by the way.
Hi. How I got into it was I came across from I was born in India, lived in New Guinea, and I came to Australia when my parents divorced, and I came over with my mother. So I came from this beautiful tropical, coral reef, big plantation with servants, all sorts of stuff. And I landed in middle of central Queensland, so northwest Queensland, I could say. In the middle of winter, it was bloody cold. It was dry, like the moisture got sucked out of your skin. It was like taking a tropical fish and putting them on, in the desert. It was just, traumatic. And even though I spoke English, I was brought up with English as my first language. They spoke some weird thing, and there was all this misconnection with words and things like that. So I learned really quickly how to watch people and become aware of the emotional interchanges that were going on. And also I was Indian. So I was born in India and I had this Indian background. And, no one knew what an Indian was. They thought that was like, that kind of Indian. At 7, I knew that they were on the wrong continent. I'm going, that's not the right continent, So, I was grateful when the Pakistani cricket team came to Australia, because then they realised, even though it wasn't the right country, they knew sort of where it was. But so for me, it was always about, how do I fit in? How do I fit into this place and be okay and be able to communicate and connect? So just watching people all the time, watching how they did things. So
did you have obviously there was, how old were you when you came here again, sorry?
7.
So did you have you would have had a language barrier? There would have been a huge
No. I only spoke English. I spoke Pidgin English from Papua New Guinea, but really, I spoke English. It's just that the weird type of English that country Queenslanders speak, and it's very strange, ports and tea and all that weird stuff. I remember my mum being invited to tea, and she thought that the lady didn't have enough crockery for all of us. So she took enough plates and cutlery to this tea, but it was actually dinner. And the idea of bringing a plate was you're supposed to put something on the plate and bring it with you. So all these little things that create this disconnection and take your thought to school. Why would I take my suitcase to school? I'm going to school. I'm not going to travel. All these little types of things that would create this miscommunication and a lot of colloquialisms and things like that. And so I became a watcher. I watched everyone. And when I hit high school, I was really, again, a fish out of water. And there was a lot of groups, gang sort of groups. And I learned to become invisible very quickly, so I would stay out of that environment, be part of a gang, but be invisible in the gang, so I wouldn't be caught out, punched up or whatever.
Caught out or even caught up.
Yeah, caught up, very much so.
Yeah.
So I didn't realise that's, I was reading body language and all that type of thing right from very young, and it was really for a survival technique. Yeah. And then as I grew older, my father actually is Herman Muller, and he put together psychosomatic therapy, which is a combination of many different aspects of reading people and putting into a therapeutic format that you could teach people how to read people. Because we read people all the time, you know, you read them all the time. No matter what you may not know what you're reading, but you're reading them. Yeah. So there's all this communication going on, but also there's all this miscommunication going on, because a lot of this doesn't necessarily match what's going on in someone's physical body. And
no, and you know, I mean, look, I mean, we talk about it a lot, and I specifically talk about it a lot, and relationships, and everything comes down to relationships. And no matter whether you have a relationship with your mother, your father, your child, business relationships, you have relationships. If you're a human being, relationships are super important, and relationships and communication are even more important. And there can be a lot that's lost in translation.
And there's also a lot of lost in translation, because a lot of people actually don't know what they're saying with their bodies. So I call it body gossip. You know, when people are gossiping in the background, well, your body actually does that as well. So you might be saying, oh, yeah, I'm this, I'm blah, 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 but your body's going, you know, twitching all over. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true. Yeah. So people read more of that body language than they actually listen to what you're saying. So there's part of them that is reading your body language, and there's part of them that is sort of listening, but if one's attracting more, they're listening to that thread, not necessarily the thread you want them to listen to. So
it's so interesting. This stuff, it's so important, because it's not just what you say anymore. And because obviously, you know, 50 years ago, people would be looking at you going, you crazy? Like, what are you talking about? Your word is your bond. Yeah, well, this is correct. Well, your word is your bond. Somebody said something. It's like, yeah, but you know what? There are more ways to receive information than just through words. And that is actually what, I mean, you've got some, you pack a punch. You've got some serious, you know, background. So if we're talking off camera and talking about like NLP, you've got all sorts of different things that you specialize in.
The other aspect is that, you know, people don't realize that when you read someone, you've got all this, your own personal stuff on board. So you've got all these filters that when you look at someone, you're going, and this comes down to judgment. You know, you're measuring everyone around you and each connection that you make with your own safety level, whether you're emotionally safe, physically safe, mentally safe, you know, and you're relating it to your past. So you're not really looking at the present. You're going through all this negotiation stuff. What happened in the past? What could happen in the future? And when you're worrying about those two things, you're not actually experiencing or living life.
Have you seen what's on my T-shirt? Can you see that?
No, I can't.
I can do this on purpose, right? But look what it says, in the moment. And that, and what you're talking about is actually being present and being in the moment.
And in that aspect of it, I actually don't teach body language, how to hold your body. I actually want to look underneath and why you created that body language in the first place. Because once you've got that pattern and it's sitting there unconsciously in the background, it's very hard to override it. So especially if you're a little bit tense or you're, you know, a bit nervous or anything like that. So what I like to do is watch people's videos and go, okay, this is what you're doing. Let's have a look at why you created that pattern and whether you can let it go so you can create a new one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people try and override, like I'm going to hold myself in this particular position or this particular position or whatever it is, and they get all caught up in holding themselves right, but underneath there's this discomfort that's coming through.
Yeah, and a disconnect.
Yeah,
you know? I mean, and it's funny. I mean, who out there has had like conversation or been in a conversation with someone, and you can hear what's coming out of their mouth, but the rest of it doesn't match, and you're just sitting and you're not even paying attention to what they're saying because you're too busy going, what the fuck? Like, what are you actually trying to say here? You know, like,
yeah, and not.
Sorry, go. You're right.
It's not even. Sometimes it's a mismatch with your product. So somebody might be actually selling a product They don't believe in it. They don't have a connection to it. And they're just going through the process, and you can tell something's not right. And what actually can happen then is when it's not right, the person who's watching goes, they're lying. It's not that they're lying. They're just not connected with it, or they're not passionate about it, or they're, they've got something else going, but it looks like a lie.
So from your experience, like, I mean, when you're sitting and having an interaction with someone, what are some of the typical things that, like, because this is really important, Gillian. I mean, you can actually have interactions like when you're talking with your bosses, your partners, and your children, you're trying to like have a conversation, get information out of them. What are some of the things that you can look for to see if somebody's actually telling the truth physically?
Well, truth is one of those things. It's really subjective, and what is the purpose behind it? So truth is, what's my truth? It may not be your truth that you're viewing, but it may be my truth. So you can see people who are really obsessed or passionate about something, and it doesn't matter what anyone else's view is, this is their truth. And if they believe it, even if it's incorrect, if their belief is so strong, you can't tell if they're lying or not, because for them it's not a lie, it is truth. So I always a bit challenged when people say, how do you tell if people are telling the truth? Well, if it's their truth, it'll be true. So
I get it.
To do that. And
is there any like subtle signs at all, like physical signs that somebody, even when they truly believe it, is there giveaways? Because no.
You have to be super, super good at reading people to actually pick that disconnect. It's so very, very it's like a tiny little silk thread. It's not obvious, and you've got to actually look for the silk thread. So if you're looking for that, what else are you not looking at? So if you're trying to find the lie buried in their truth, then there's a loss of communication there too. So for me, what I do is, if I'm centered and secure and feel really good about myself, and I'm getting a vibe off someone, then I know it's them. And then I have to go, okay, if it's them, what is their intention? What is their intention in this engagement? And then I come out and ask them, what do you want out of this? I'm very direct. I'm a very direct person. But
it's very interesting. We and we're going to be interviewing her soon. But a lady called Jess Clare, and I actually was interviewed on one of her shows, and she talks a lot about intention. And when before she has an interaction with anybody, she will write down the intentions and share the intention with the person that she speaks. I think it's very powerful. Intentions are huge. And again, this is the stuff that we never used to talk about 20, 30 years ago, 50 years ago.
No. So
be a witch.
If I'm feeling discomforted with someone, and I ask myself, do I feel good about myself? Do I feel, all of me is good? And I get the answer no. Then I want to look a little bit deeper. Then there's self-reflection, what's going on inside me that's causing this interaction, and is it the block that I'm seeing in someone else? So if they're, if you're the common denominator, it'll turn up in all over your life. If you're not the common denominator and it's happening just in the moment here, then it's something between the two of you, that you are either misconstruing, or you're need to look a little bit deeper within yourself. What's your intention in this experience? And for me, it doesn't matter if I'm having a negative experience or a positive experience. I've always got something to learn. I love feedback, and I love negative feedback. I love positive feedback, but it's about that interaction. How does that work for me when I walk away?
Yeah, and the thing is, it's all about quality as well. And when you're interacting with somebody, the quality of the conversation, the quality of the energy, and how things feel. Because like people used to ignore their gut instinct, and thank the gods that there's more information out there now about listening to your gut and how all that type of. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Like the gut being the brain, and
Well, for me, mine doesn't turn up in the gut. mine turns up in my skin. So it's like, because I'm actually quite a kinesthetic person. So when I read faces, it's very analytical, and we break it down from bone structure and your muscle tone and tissue development and all your features, and each section represents part of your life, and your whole body's in your face, so you can read your body. Like, it's full on. It's really lots of information. So if you have a look at my face, I'm actually really got a lot of tissue, a lot of tactile. So this is your mental, your emotional, and your physical. And I live in this lower half, emotional, visual, kinesthetic. So for me, when I get a intuitive experience, or that kind of feeling, it happens in my skin, and it happens what I see. So what I'm looking at and how it's happening in my skin. I've got friends who get gut feelings. I have friends who go, oh, in their mind, and they go, oh, and then they start to analyze it. And, as soon as you go, but, or what if, you're done.
Yeah.
The intuitive part is gone, and that gut feeling has disappeared, and now you're starting to analyze and making things, justifying the situation.
So does that manifest as goosebumps for you? Is that what that is?
I get hot, like my skin gets hot and prickly. So it's like a response, like, that doesn't feel right, or sometimes my breath disappears. So it's you've got to know what your thing is.
Wow. And how do you know? How do you? I know this sounds. I'm asking the question because I know that there's going to be people watching, going, well, how am I going to differentiate between and know what your feelings are? Like, so,
self-analysis is huge. Self-analysis is massive. So for me, that's how I live my life. If something's going on in my life, the first place I go is here. What's turning up for me? What's it doing? I used to be like this. I used to, lots of judgment, lots of it's you. But now I know this is the only place I can control my life. So I look inside and ask myself, is this a good feeling or is this a bad feeling? So the sweating thing tends to be a bad thing for me. Like, if I blow into a sweat, that's normally a negative. But if it's excitement, it comes from the inside out. So I get this, so it's really learning how your body works, how you actually function in your system, and how it works for you or doesn't work for you.
I mean, and I think for you, it's just kind of like very simple, because you've been studying this for a long time. How long have you been studying this for?
25
years. What
have
you been studying?
Pardon?
What have you been studying, and how long?
Okay, so I've probably been studying human beings since I was 7 because of the need.
Yeah.
But the desire to understand more about people was after my husband passed away. I had to find a new way in my life. I had to find a way to be different. It gave me an opportunity to really explore the world from a different point of view. And my dad was already into all the esoterics and the psychosomatics and how the body worked, how we communicate. So for me, it was just like I landed with my dad and I learned so much from him, and I trained in psychosomatic therapy, and I teach psychosomatics now. But really it was the therapy, the clinic position, utilizing hypnosis, clinical hypnosis and NLP, and doing body work, learning about how the body functions and responds to the world. And also I used to do mind, body, spirit festivals, reading 40 people a day, 10-minute readings. It teaches you to really hone your skills. And then somebody asked me, how do you answer questions so quickly? And I said, the body of work that I've got inside me makes it easy for me to read someone from a photo or on a video screen. They don't
me. Like, do me now.
Do you. Do you. Come close to the screen. Come closer to the screen.
I'm coming.
Okay.
Go.
So you've got this lovely oval face at the top here, very open-minded, you've got a lovely broad heart, and then it comes down into this point. So this is your physical zone, and you do the mind and the emotions really well, but the physical zone is a bit of a tightrope walk. So anchoring things in reality, it's really good that you work with other people to do those earthy things, because you're the overviewer, you're the thinker, you're the fast mover.
You're fucking nailing it. It's a really good job. I know how to hire people. Put it that way.
It's a really important skill to know what you're not good at and you don't care to learn. You hire people to do that thing. You focus on what you do well.
Yeah.
And that's really honoring who you are. And another little thing, you're not a very good listener with your ears. You're a really good listener with your eyes.
Yeah.
So if someone's in front of you, you can hear really well. But if they're beside you, so if I went off the screen and talked to you, you would find it a little bit disconcerting. Like, how do I?
Yeah.
So on the phone, but FaceTime or video, much more interactive. So when you're listening to someone who's boring as batshit, write notes. Because
yeah, I do anyway. I have to anyway.
Yeah.
I just have to as a person. Like, I have to take notes when somebody's talking, and not always because I'm bored. So,
and it helps you manifest it into reality. The information that's coming in, you write notes, and it manifests it where you don't normally. You haven't in the past done well at. So manifesting is your journey in this life. Now, whether you do it with other people or whether you do it with yourself, it's a skill that doesn't come necessarily easy for you in the physical.
Wow.
So
how do I interpret? This is like a psychic. I love this. I'm going to have this off camera.
Everybody says that. But really, your body is just talking to me. So what actually happens is, in the womb, when you're created, when you manifest into reality, already your mother's influencing how you're going to grow, because of all the influences that are happening to her are translated into you. So sometimes we can actually come out into the world and be living our mother's story rather than the story that we could live. So then how we interact with the world as children influences how our bones grow, so we can support ourselves. Our flexibility also creates that. So that's the joints. How flexible are we with that that structure that we're building from childhood? And then how we build the muscle on the top is how we respond to the outside world. So, until you're 18, 19, maybe 23 in boys, you're really living a fated life. You're not living a destiny yet. But as soon as you become an adult, you get to choose. You get to choose to go, that was my past. I could live that fate. Or I could take some of the stuff that I want or that I've learned, and I can create my destiny. Now, I didn't do that until I was 30.
Yeah. And this is it though. Like, there's a lot of people that don't, and they continue to stay in that rut, and they never truly. That's a perfect way. I've never heard it ever explained like that, Gillian, ever. So that's like a perfect way to explain it. And actually I think that could be potentially life-changing. That's life-changing advice, and you've simplified it. I think it's amazing. I've never heard
it was life-changing. It was life-changing for me. Like, I didn't think that. I thought I had to live a fated life until I was 30. And this monumental event of my husband dying at 28 and me going through this process of learning new things, I went, I can actually create my own life. I can create a life that I love, or I can come to love. But I encourage people, once they become adults, to really step into their power, grab a hold of what has worked or what they've learned from in their fated childhood into adulthood, and take it and go, okay, so how can I weave a life from my experience, not live back in my experience, but weave a life from my experience that I love or, want to have in my, because once you start doing that, that brings it back to you. And then when you communicate with people and when you connect with people, you're communicating from you, not your past, not your fate, not your family, but from where you are.
Just while we're talking, if anybody wants to ask any questions off to the right-hand side, go ahead, because I know that Gillian will be more than up for answering anything. So, man, like all this stuff, like the goosebumps and kind of like all the stuff, the non-tangible stuff that we're actually, because that is actually what we're talking about, because I've struggled with trying to get people to understand that for years also, like the gut, whether it's the gut or the goosebumps or the light bulb moments or whatever have you, none of it's tangible. So it's difficult to try, and I understand how some people just can't get their head around it because you can't, because it's not tangible. Like when you break a bone, you can see it, it's physically broken. So how can you see a disconnected energy or a disconnected personality because you can't physically see it? But you have tapped in to that. You have the ability to be able to see that.
And it's teachable. It's a teachable, tangible thing. It's not something that I'm psychic about or anything like that. It's a teachable way to understand people, but also to understand yourself. When you can read your own face, when you can read your body, how much tissue is around in one particular part of your body, and it's causing, a problem, or if there's a lack of tissue. So when there's lots of tissue on a body, like if there's too much, the type of tissue will tell you how deep that information will go. So if they've got rubbery tissue, protective, it'll bounce off. So they'll feel like people around them will feel like that they're disconnected from them, they don't understand, and all that type of thing. And then there's this doughy kind of tissue. So the information comes in, or the communication comes in, and it gets stuck in there. Like there is no response. It doesn't respond back. And then there's this lovely tissue that responds to, those beautiful muscles that they're soft when they're not in play, but when they're in play, they're alive. And so information comes in, it's interactive, and then you get a nice response from it. But people who don't have any, it's close to the bone. So it's close to your past. It's close to that fated life that you grew up in. So it hits that and you respond instantly. There's no pause. So the tissue creates a caution, and the person's response will depend on how dense the tissue is. But if you don't have any, they're very reactive. They're either dodging and weaving, or they're acting, reacting to whatever's happening. So they can be very fast and
like me.
Well, looking at your skin, probably a little bit like you, but it's not all over your body.
No.
It's different all over your body, and each part of your body, if you work in energy centers, represents a particular part in your life. So
I think I'm a Krispy Kreme.
There's lots of people out there that are a Krispy Kreme. They're quite, they look lovely out on the outside and gorgeous, and inside they're all doughy and.
But like literally, I can. What you're saying makes perfect sense to me. Like it's just because energy, and that's what it is, because when you have an interaction with somebody, there's a chemical physical reaction. It's an energetic exchange. So when actually energy comes at somebody with less density, you're gonna get probably something that's quicker, or it's gonna have a bounce back or whatever have you. It makes perfect sense to me. I'm actually just trying to kind of like think back to all the people that I have interactions with and be like, that makes perfect sense.
And it also comes down to, when you look at someone, you talk in a particular type of language for them because that's who they are. So if they've got really big eyes, I normally use quite visual language to connect with them, and I move my hands around and, be quite visual. If they're very, they've got a large forehead and mentally driven, I leave pauses so they can mentally go through the process of understanding what I've said, and they will take a longer time to respond because they have to analyze and critique it before they come across.
And that's NLP, isn't it? Because and you know, NLP and there's a lot of fors and against. NLP can and it's widely known that you can use it for a lot of bad things, but generally NLP to be used in this way is a really respectful way to communicate with one another, because you can't, if you want to get the best out of a relationship or a communication interaction, this is the best way. You can't just, it's not a one size fits all. It's
No.
You have to communicate with people in the way that they need to receive the information. It's a very funny way to it's a reverse way to communicate, because people are so hell-bent on delivering instead of thinking about how those people are receiving.
Exactly. And what happens is that you talk your language the way you like to receive it, but if that person isn't in that kind of receiving mode, it's just going past them. So if they're a high visual and you're talking at them with like this, I'm just going to talk to you like this, and I'm not going to move any structure on my face. Exactly. So, but then if you're doing a lot of this and the person is internal dialogue who likes to go through their own this is very distracting for them.
Yeah.
Right? So it can be very annoying for them. They want to go inside and just process, and quietness is really, those pauses in between make a difference.
Is there because this is actually something that you do, and we're just running over time, but this is actually something that you do, isn't it? And there's a way to figure out the type of communicator you are, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I love it.
I do assessments for people for business and work and interviews and all sorts of things, talking to their children. They might be having challenges with their children and they need to have that communication. So it's
and then around children who need to talk to their parents or their grandparents or whatever, communication is everything. Gillian, I've got to wrap this up, sweetheart, but oh my God, I could seriously sit here and talk for hours. I've got goosebumps. See? Happens in my skin. I could seriously, honestly, just sit and talk for hours, but we can't. But we will have a chat offline. I want to say thank you so much for being so generous with your time today and for taking the time to share with our community. We will be eternally grateful to you. It is amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Blessings. Thank you.